Rickie Collins to Syracuse does not necessarily mean they're out on Kyle McCord. In fact, it actually might mean the opposite.
You are Locked On Syracuse, your daily podcast on the Syracuse Orange. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome into Locked On Syracuse. I'm Jackson Holzer, and thank you for making us your first listen of every single day here on the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day, and we are free and available wherever you get your podcasts. And folks, Rickie Collins, the LSU quarterback in the transfer portal, officially signed with the Orange on Friday, okay? Rickie Collins is 6'2", 205 pounds, and he's got 3 years of college eligibility remaining. When he signed with Syracuse, I think the natural instinct is to wonder what's going on with Kyle McCord. Does this mean that the Kyle McCord dream of coming back, is it over now that the Orange have signed Rickie Collins? And I'm here to tell you right now, I do not think that is the case. I think that Rickie Collins is more so part of Syracuse's backup plan, which is what we are going to talk about here on this edition of Locked On Syracuse. We're also going to discuss the quarterback outlook if McCord were to come back, and the quarterbacks if Kyle McCord does not coming back. So all that and more here on this edition of Locked On Syracuse. Before we get to everything, this episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL playoffs are almost here, but it's not too late to get in on the regular season action with FanDuel, because right now new customers can finish the season strong with $250 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. So Rickie Collins, he transferred over to Syracuse on Friday. It was official this time. And of course, it's fair to wonder, does this mean the Kyle McCord dream of him getting another year, is it dead? I'm here to tell you right now, I think it's actually the opposite. I think that Rickie Collins was the only move that made sense with a potential return of Kyle McCord. And for those that don't know, I'm going to explain it more on a full podcast tomorrow. But basically, Kyle McCord, according to Syracuse.com, is in the appeals process of trying to get another year. So this is not just smoke and mirrors. No, this is an actual thing with Kyle McCord trying to get another year of eligibility. Now, to understand why Syracuse is not necessarily done with their pursuit of trying to get Kyle McCord back, let's talk about other quarterbacks that the Orange were linked to in the transfer portal besides Rickie Collins. Okay? Let's start off with Kaidon Salter from Liberty. Salter, in my opinion, he was my number one choice. He was the guy who I would have gone after if Kyle McCord obviously were to not come back. Kyle McCord's plan A. But if he were to not come back, I would have wanted Kaidon Salter. I like the fact that he's a dual threat quarterback. And I believe that with stronger weapons, he can return more towards the player he was in 2023 than he was in 2024. He's got 1 year of eligibility left. He did commit to Colorado, though, with Deion Sanders. However, let's say Syracuse had gotten Kaidon Salter from the transfer portal. There is no way Kaidon Salter is coming to the Orange if Kyle McCord had a chance to come back. Like literally zero. He was not coming to the Orange just to be potentially a backup. This is someone who's only got 1 year of eligibility. I imagine a guy like Kaidon Salter wants to make it to the NFL. That doesn't mean that he's going to make it to the NFL, but he certainly wants to. And at minimum, he probably wants to start because he is a competitor and they want to start. And also when you start, you're going to make a lot of money, right? In NIL. Kaidon Salter was not coming to Syracuse if they were like, hey, man, Kyle McCord might come back. Because if Kyle McCord comes back, where does that leave Kaidon Salter? Well, it leaves him on the bench. So it makes sense that he committed to Colorado. Now, I know that Colorado, they brought in some hotshot quarterback recruit in this year's recruiting cycle. Julian Lewis might be the name. But Kaidon Salter is the veteran, and that recruit that Colorado got, well, he could easily redshirt. So there's less competition than if Kyle McCord had come back to Syracuse. So had Caden Salter committed to the Orange, basically what I am telling you is that the Kyle McCord dream is over. It's over because you're not getting both. It's one or the other. Let's talk about Connor Wigman from Texas A&M. I know a lot of people liked him. Myself, I was kind of iffy on him, but I didn't mind. He's a former 5-star recruit in 2022. He is a pro-style quarterback. He would have definitely fit into Syracuse's system, and you can make the argument that he would have had a terrific year with Syracuse. But he committed to Houston. Unlike Salter, Connor Wigman has 2 years of eligibility left, so in theory, he could sit a year and then potentially start in 2026. However, he has starting experience. Connor Wigman played at Texas A&M. This is not someone who just rode the pine for a couple of years at a big-time program and is now potentially looking to start. No, this guy played. He didn't play always well. He wasn't always perfect. I'll give him that. But he did play, so I imagine a guy like Connor Wigman, he would not come to Syracuse to, again, be a backup. He's going to be the man at Houston. Let's also discuss Anthony Calandria, the Virginia quarterback. And I'll admit, I was very glad that Syracuse did not end up with him. He committed to UNLV. For those that are interested, he has been mediocre at best in the ACC. And yeah, again, at best. For the last couple of years. I did not like Anthony Calandria. As soon as I saw the two linked, I said, no, thank you. No, thank you at all. He's got multiple years of eligibility left, but because he has already been a starter for 2 years, he's not going to make a move from Virginia to Syracuse just to be a backup. You see what I'm saying here? Of the 4 guys that the Orange were linked to, the only one that actually made sense for a possible Kyle McCord return is Rickie Collins, because none of the other options were going to come to the Orange to potentially be a backup. None of them. If Rickie Collins has to sit in 2025 because Kyle McCord comes back, at least he would have 2 more years to be a starting quarterback in college football because he's got 3 years of eligibility remaining. He's the only one that would have made sense. So in my opinion, Rickie Collins committing to Syracuse is actually more of a sign that Kyle McCord could come back. It doesn't mean that it'll happen. I'm not sitting here making a declaration it's going to happen. In fact, I still don't think it's going to happen. I'm hopeful. I'm more confident than I was a couple of weeks ago now that Kyle McCord is appealing. But the point being of this entire segment is this. Rickie Collins, I think, is much more in Syracuse's backup plans than he is as this is our plan A. I think plan A remains the same. It's getting Kyle McCord back for another year. This move signals that, unlike what Caden Salter, Connor Wigman, or Anthony Calandria would have, which is that the dream is done. So overall, Rickie Collins was not my first choice in the portal, but it's the only choice that makes sense for a potential return of Kyle McCord. Now, coming up, what happens if Kyle McCord does come back to the Orange? Let's discuss the quarterbacks for next season. Did Rocket Money help you find any subscriptions you forgot about or that you were paying for twice? That definitely happened to me. I had a few subscriptions that I didn't even realize I was still paying for, and Rocket Money made it so easy to track them all down. It's like having a personal assistant for your finances. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps lower your bills so you can grow your savings. It brings everything together in one place, whether it's subscriptions, your spending habits, or even the goals you want to hit this year. Rocket Money has over 5 million users and has saved a total of $500 million in canceled subscriptions, saving members up to $740 a year when using all the app's premium features. For me, one of the best features is the subscription tracker. I've used it to cancel services I wasn't using anymore. I've already saved a ton. Plus, with their goals feature, I've been able to automatically set aside money for my future. No more stressing about budgeting every month. Cancel your unwanted subscriptions and reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/lockedon today. That's rocketmoney.com/lockedon. rocketmoney.com/lockedon. I'm Jackson Holzer, and this is Locked On Syracuse. And folks, if you really like what you are watching or listening, feel free to hit that subscribe button. It's absolutely free and helps grow the channel to reach all Syracuse Orange fans. On this episode, we are talking about how Rickie Collins is more so the backup plan in case Kyle McCord does not come back. I just talked about how he was the only option that Syracuse was linked to in the portal that actually made sense for a potential Kyle McCord return. Therefore, I don't believe that the dream of McCord coming back is dead. So for those that don't know, Kyle McCord is in the appeals process trying to get another year of college eligibility. This is confirmed by Syracuse.com's Chris Charlson. On this segment, we are going to talk about what happens if Kyle McCord does come back, but more specifically, the quarterback outlook. Because look, let's be honest. If Kyle McCord comes back, I'm going to have to do a ton of podcasts about what happens with everything regarding the team. We don't have to talk about the team. We're just talking about the quarterbacks here, okay? Let's say he comes back. He gets the other year of eligibility. He forgoes the NFL draft and says, I want another year with Syracuse football. Hip, hip, hooray. We are all excited. Here's what I think could happen. Well, first off, Kyle McCord is unquestionably the starting quarterback for next year. Unquestioned, no doubt, slam dunk, put it in the bank. Now, I imagine that the Orange have had conversations with all their quarterbacks, but maybe more specifically, the guy that just committed to your program and Rickie Collins. In the scenario McCord comes back, Rickie Collins will enter the 2026 season with 2 years of eligibility and a legitimate chance to earn a starting spot. Okay? The interesting question is now what happens with the following three players. You got Jakari Williams, Luke Carney, and Rich Bellin. Jakari Williams is a 2024 three-star commit that just redshirted. You also got Carney and Bellin, who are each three-star commits in 2025. We've talked about Carney a ton on this podcast. I love his upside. From a Locked On recruiting expert, Brian Smith, he even said that if he had went to a different school, he could have been a five-star quarterback prospect. This is a really, really good player in Luke Carney. I think because the quarterback room in 2026 would be pretty crowded, it would be. It's likely that someone is going to transfer out, and if I had to guess, I would say that would be Jakari Williams. The reason why I would say Jakari Williams is because while he did sign with Fran Brown, I have made this point before that Jakari Williams was really a Dino Babers commit. So whatever Dino Babers told him could be completely different to what Fran Brown has told him. I'm not saying that the current coaching staff doesn't like Jakari Williams. That's not what I'm saying at all. I'm just pointing at the fact that unlike Luke Carney, unlike Rich Bellin, and you can even throw in Rickie Collins, who are legitimate Fran Brown commits, Jakari Williams committed before Fran Brown got there. He did ultimately sign in the 2024 class, which was Fran Brown's first technical class, but he committed when Dino Babers was there. So he would, in my opinion, he would be a transfer out candidate. And it would really have to come down to what happens with the backup job this season. Because you got right now, if Kyle McCord comes back, a four-way battle for the backup job. You can also throw in Michael Johnson Jr., but I don't think he's got any sort of chance of playing at quarterback next year. That's just my opinion. But you would have Rickie Collins, Jakari Williams, Luke Carney, and Rich Bellin, potentially for the backup. I believe that Collins and Williams would go in with the upper hand just because they got experience. But Fran Brown has shown us he is not afraid to play true freshmen. He is going to play the best player. He's going to award the higher spot on the depth chart to who he believes is the best player. He does not care about a player's year. Exhibit A, defensive tackle Murad Watson, true freshman. Exhibit B, when healthy, it was Marcellus Barnes at corner, a true freshman, now in the transfer portal. So Fran Brown's not afraid to play a true freshman. So that means that I believe that Luke Carney and Rich Bellin will also have a legitimate shot to earn the backup job behind Kyle McCord. And whoever wins that backup job, because all of those players are relatively young, I think that would signal who's going to be the starter in 2026. That is what happens if Kyle McCord comes back. Basically, it's likely that one or two of those four guys are going to transfer out. And it's likely that whoever earns the backup job will be the starter in 2026. Of course, I'm talking about Rickie Collins, the LSU transfer from recently, Jakari Williams, who's going to be a redshirt freshman, and true freshmen Luke Carney and Rich Bellin. It's a crowded quarterback room as it is right now. If you add in Kyle McCord, the backup job becomes very critical to determining who's going to be the quarterback in 2026. So overall, I hope that Kyle McCord comes back. It would be terrific. Getting Rickie Collins in the transfer portal does not eliminate the dream. In fact, it was the only one that actually made sense because Rickie Collins is going to compete for either the starting job or the backup job, unlike the other three players that Syracuse was connected to in the portal. I'm Jackson Holzer. This is Locked On Syracuse. And on this segment, we just talked about the quarterback outlook for this season and beyond if Kyle McCord were to come back. Now, coming up, what happens in the event Kyle McCord does not come back to Syracuse? That's coming up next here on the Locked On Syracuse podcast. The NFL playoffs are almost here, but it's not too late to get in on the regular season action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers can finish the season strong with $250 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. FanDuel has so many ways for you to pick up a W. I love betting on which players will score a touchdown and how many points each team will score. It's thrilling. And guys, for Syracuse football, last time I checked FanDuel, the line is now 16.5 for the Orange to win the Holiday Bowl against Washington State. With all the opt-outs going on, honestly, that line could climb to 17.5, 18.5 points potentially. So you might want to get in on the action now. It's already moved a ton since all the opt-outs have happened. To get in on the action, just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your chance at $250 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Let's say that Kyle McCord loses the appeal and does not get another year of college eligibility. Or let's say that Kyle McCord decides to go to the NFL draft, because keep in mind, just because a player gets another year of eligibility does not mean the player actually has to use it. Kyle McCord can still decide to go to the NFL draft instead of coming back to Syracuse. So for this segment, let's just talk about what happens if Kyle McCord does not come back to the Orange. First of all, I talked about it on last segment, how it would be a four-way competition for the backup job between Rickie Collins, Jakari Williams, Luke Carney, and Rich Bellin. Well, there are two scenarios that could happen if Kyle McCord does not return, but one is far more likely than the other. This is the most likely option, a four-way competition for the starting job between the same guys that I just talked about. It's not my most preferred choice, but I think that's where Syracuse would go. That's why I'm thinking to myself that Rickie Collins is part of the backup plan for the Orange. I don't think he is the backup plan. He's part of the backup plan. He's going to have a chance to compete for the starting job. I don't think Syracuse is just going to hand it to him. It's not like Kyle McCord from Ohio State where, yeah, you knew he was going to start. There was no competition. Rickie Collins is going to have to earn the starting job. Same thing with Jakari Williams or Luke Carney or Rich Bellin. And like I said in the last segment, just because those guys, the latter two, are true freshmen, it doesn't mean that Fran Brown won't give them a chance if he believes that they are the best chance to win. So that is probably the most likely outcome if the Orange don't get Kyle McCord back another year. It's just going to be a big competition for the starting job. But there is a less likely option. And that is that they go back in the transfer portal, but more specifically, they could look to add a quarterback from a college football playoff team. Now, chances are it wouldn't be a starter on one of the college football playoff teams, but still, you could look to add from one of those teams. The transfer portal, for those that don't know, it closes on December 28th. It doesn't mean that all the players in the portal have to commit by that day. It means that all players who want to enter the portal have to enter by December 28th. However, there is an exception to the rule. If your team is playing in the college football playoff, the players on that team receive a 5-day extension from when their season ends. I actually read that in a USA Today article, so I kind of find it funny that everyone is overreacting when we're seeing players from playoff teams enter the portal because, guys, they don't have to enter the portal by December 28th. The guy on Penn State, Pribula, he could have waited. I'm not saying what he did was wrong. In fact, it actually makes sense that he enters the portal because you want to make sure that there are still spots available. That's the disadvantage of waiting longer. But still, you get 5 additional days from when your team is eliminated. What does that mean? If you are Syracuse, you could look to add a quarterback that potentially enters the transfer portal. I think it's the unlikely option of the two, but it is a possibility. The crown jewel of who I'm really talking about is, I know you're going to laugh, but I have to throw the name out there. It's Quinn Ewers at Texas. The reason why I mentioned the name is because they're going to go with Arch Manning at Texas next year, which means Quinn Ewers has 2 choices. He can either enter the NFL draft, which I don't know what his NFL draft stock is right now. I don't think it's as high as people, at least what it was at the beginning of the year. Or he can go to the transfer portal and likely earn a ton in NIL money. So, yeah, he would be the crown jewel of what I am talking about. I'm not saying they're going to go out and try to get Quinn Ewers, but at least with getting a guy like Rickie Collins, you do have that flexibility now of if a guy like Quinn Ewers were to enter the portal, you could still go out and try to get him. Because had you committed yourself to Caden Salter, or had you committed yourself to Connor Wigman or Anthony Calandria, a guy like Quinn Ewers enters the portal, you're not going in on it. It's not going to happen. You're already committed. I think it's unlikely that the Orange go this route. I think it's much more likely that they would do a 4-way competition for the backup or for the starting job if Kyle McCord can't come back. But that's where I'm at right now with the quarterbacks if Kyle McCord does not come back. They have 2 choices: 4-way competition for a starting job or potentially dive back into the transfer portal for when the teams in the college football playoff start to get eliminated. Let me know what you think in the comments section below. As far as what is coming up on the podcast in the future, I'm going to give you guys a full podcast tomorrow detailing what's going on with Kyle McCord because I've kind of hinted at it. I've alluded to it. I've told you that he's appealing, but I'm going to tell you guys exactly what you need to know about Kyle McCord at this stage in the process. Plus, be on the lookout potentially for a mini podcast because Syracuse football added another wide receiver, this time from South Carolina. So I could do a mini podcast on him. Thank you for making Locked On Syracuse your first listen today. And for your second listen, you can check out the Locked On ACC podcast. Alex Dono and Kenton Gibbs, they keep it real and bring you the truth about where your favorite ACC team stands within the conference. You can find Locked On ACC on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. Folks, thank you all so much for watching. Thank you all so much for listening. If you like this video, click that like button. If you really liked it, subscribe to the channel. Folks, we recently hit over 3,000 subscribers. Thank you all so much. The next goal is 4,000 subscribers. So, folks, if you really like it, do me a favor, hit that subscribe button. It helps the channel reach all Syracuse fans. And while you're at it, turn on those notifications so you know right away when I am dropping the next podcast. And everyone, take care.